How about the conversations we've had in the past about how people are just people? So everybody said, oh, no, not this person. This person's a doctor. This person is not a person. This person is a doctor. Or, no, this is not a conclusion that people reached. This is a conclusion that scientists reached. They're not people. They are, but they're scientists first, and then they're people. And we've had that conversation many times, haven't we? That the most important thing always is that they are people. In all cases, even when you're evaluating the things I say and the things I do, and everything that all the work that I do with Last Symptom, the first and most important qualifier there is that I am a person. And then I'm Brian Barnett, Last Symptom guy. Your doctor. It's wonderful that he knows so much about the human body and stuff like that. But first and foremost, he's a person. How about your favorite therapist that you've ever met in your entire life? Trust every single thing comes out of her mouth. Well, okay. She's a person first. That's the most important thing. And we've had this discussion many times, and it's an unpopular conversation to have, because you know what happens when you say, what a scientist is a person first and foremost? Well, then you get people who say, oh, see there, science denier. Only an utter fool would not understand that science is not just something that exists and that we get to study and understand without it being filtered through people. I got into a conversation on Twitter the other day with a scientist. We ended up having a real nice conversation, by the way. Started off a little tense, but it ended up good. Ended up to be a good conversation. He said, you are suggesting that I allow emotion to affect my studies. And I said, wrong. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that your studies are being influenced by your emotions. But I said, I know for an absolute fact, without any question whatsoever, that the interpretation of the results of your studies are being filtered through emotion. They absolutely are. So my whole conversation with him was, why can you have 1,000 scientists and half of them think one thing and half of them think another, and they're all looking at the exact same study? Why is that? And why is it that scientists are never 100% in agreement? Are they less scientists than you are because they disagree with you? So then what explains it? What explains it is that first and foremost, everybody doing these studies, everybody interpreting the results of these studies are people. And they have their own biases, their own preferences, their own ways of thinking, their own expectations, and on and on and on. Anyway, I'm getting off on a big tangent there, but this article is called Ohio Supreme Court Suspends a Judge Over Unprecedented Behavior. Unprecedented is in quotes. So a lot of people like to think, well, a judge, once you get to be a judge, you're infallible. What's the most important part? Person, then judge. What if you get to be, but wait a second. What if you get to be a Supreme Court justice? You're the highest judge in the land. Right? So that must matter the most, right? Nope. What matters the most is person. They are a person, and they are also a Supreme Court judge. So anyway, this article says the Ohio Supreme Court has indefinitely suspended a local judge citing unprecedented misconduct that includes falsifying court documents, issuing illegitimate arrest warrants, donning inappropriate attire in court. Cleveland Municipal Court Judge Pinky Carr was, what a name, huh? Repeated acts of dishonesty, the blatant and systemic disregard of due process, the disrespectful treatment of court staff and litigants, the abuse of capious warrants, and the court's contempt power. Carr ruled her courtroom in a reckless and cavalier manner, unrestrained by the law or the court's rules. She conducted business in a manner befitting a game show host. What did Carr, this disgraced judge, what do you think she used as her excuse for all this stuff? You got it. Mental health disorders. Boy, that's a nice thing to fall back on, ain't it? And she wasn't crazy, right? She wasn't saying, I lost my mind. I went insane. My brain wasn't functioning. Thought I was Abraham Lincoln. She's not saying that. So what is she really talking about? She's talking about emotional health issues. So she's saying like she has narcissism or borderline personality disorder or something like that, and that's why all this is. She should be let off the hook. I did that too, by the way. Marriage falling apart. That was my argument. But listen, I'm dealing with mental health issues. Dealing with these mental health disorders. I don't have any control over this stuff. I shouldn't be held responsible for the things I do. Back to that teeter-totter, right? What's that an example of? It's an example of the teeter-totter being tilted too far in the direction of permissiveness. Yes, it's true. I did a lot of things that I wouldn't have otherwise done. It's still not an excuse for the things I did. My responsibility for doing better did not disappear because I was dealing with some things that I had yet to identify. Well, I'll tell you what, if you were on the right side of her, I bet she'd be a very fun judge. Not too much, though, if you're on the wrong side of her, right?